I'm Jamie Kale Miller. We are Pandora Astrology. With me is,
Hey guys, it's Julia Mijas.
and we want to tell you today about this year's Mars retrograde period because it's having some very interesting interactions with other stuff that we are really feeling this year in our skies. So, most particularly, Mars is going to be impacting something that Julie and I have talked with you about before, the pandemic hot degree, which was formed by Saturn and Pluto when they came into a conjunction in January of 2020. This pandemic hot degree has been hot or live, a famous degree, as astrologers like to call it sometimes, ever since then, and will continue to be until December when Saturn leaves Capricorn and moves into Aquarius, not to return. And during the course of the year, as I mentioned in that other video, Jupiter lights up the hot degree several times, but Mars does too, and Mars brings a very different feel from Jupiter. So let's just talk for a minute about what is Mars anyway. What is the archetype of Mars? What is its nature? What are the sorts of things that Mars brings us? Julia, what do you think?
Hmm. Well, Mars is a planet of action, so it can set things off. It can kind of start things up.
Mm, yeah, it makes a really powerful trigger sometimes. Mars is the action hero, the warrior, the pioneer, the athlete. It's the driving, forceful, willful, self-determined side of all of us. And so, Julia, what does that mean when Mars goes retrograde in our skies?
Well, Mars goes retrograde about every 2 years.
Mm,
And when Mars goes like retrograde, what it literally means is from our perspective on Earth, it appears to have slowed down and gone
right.
backwards. But astrologers, Western astrologers, see this as a time where everything signified by Mars kind of gets inverted. And just becomes more problematic in general. Just the same way Mercury retrograde brings around miscommunications because Mercury represents communication,
Yeah.
so it's going backwards. So yeah, we're going to have some misfires.
Yeah, so aiming turns into misfiring, action turns into um, um, fumbles, um, drive turns into frustration, assertion turns into anger. And it can be a very frustrating time. I think that it does impact people with strong Mars in their chart in the first place, the most of all. So if you're an Aries or if you have Aries rising, you might really be feeling this. So this year, not only is Mars going retrograde, but it's going retrograde in its own sign of Aries, where it is stronger than ever. So this is a very hot Mars to begin with. It's very incendiary. It's like the match that lights the fuse. And as a trigger of the pandemic hot degree, I think that we can expect some surges of anger, surges of reaction, people taking independent actions and doing what they want, regardless of what might be good for everybody. Um, I mean, I think I said in the other video that there might be angry mobs. Um, I think there certainly is going to be a lot of anger and frustration in the air. And I think we're all going to have to check ourselves and we're going to have to pay attention to our actions and our feelings, especially when we see red, which is the Mars color. Um, Let me just peek at my notes and see what else we wanted to say about this. I want to get more specific and talk about dates here. So the pandemic hot degree happened at 22 degrees of Capricorn. Mars this year is going retrograde on September 9th at 28 degrees of Aries. But even before it does that, it enters its span. And by that I mean there is a certain span of degrees inside of Aries, and you may not know this, but a sign is not like a bucket into which you just fling planets any which way. Signs are very measurable. They are 30 degrees large, starting with degree 0 and finishing with 29. So what Mars does this year is goes forward to 28 degrees, turns retrograde, backs up to 15 degrees, turns direct or forward, and proceeds out through 28 degrees and beyond. The part that we notice is the retrograde portion from 28 back to 15, but really the whole thing begins when Mars enters 15 degrees in the first place, because that's the place it will retrograde to, and then it doesn't really end until it leaves 28 degrees at the very finish, because that's the place that it turned retrograde at earlier in the cycle. So 15 to 28 degrees is the span. Okay, so it goes retrograde, so it enters 15 degrees. Ooh, I don't think I wrote that down. I want to look at that. So when does Mars, and where are my glasses? They're not here. That's okay. So when does Mars enter 15 degrees? Did I write it down? So it looks like it enters 15 degrees towards the end of July. And so we may already be feeling this. I feel like that I had that written down in my notes and now I'm not finding it. So already by the end of July, we're feeling Mars entering the zone that it's going to retrograde to, which means that the setup is happening. You know, we're being set up to have something to go back to in anger, if that makes sense. So Mars enters 15 degrees towards the end of July. It comes along to 22 degrees and makes its first pass to the pandemic hot degree here, August 11th and 12th. So these are days definitely to watch out for when you may have angry people around you. And the angriest of people are going to be the ones who are experiencing the pandemic hot degree in the optimally stressful way. This will be people who have things in their chart very close to 22 degrees of Aries or Cancer or Capricorn or Libra. In other words, the cardinal signs. And if when you put 22 degrees Capricorn in your chart, you find that it makes more stressful aspects and fewer harmonious ones, then you are really at risk for having angry, thoughtless outbursts and ill thought out actions during these hits. So let's see. Then on September 9th, Mars goes retrograde. It's in 28 degrees of Aries when it does that. It backs up for a second pass to the pandemic hot degree here, October 7th to 10th. And that one should also be, you know, a pretty strong trigger. And then it retrogrades back to 15 degrees of Aries here. And on November 13th, it pivots direct and then heads through for its third and final pass, which happens December 18th to 20th of this year. Now, I have some positive thoughts that I want to inject into this, and they involve Saturn. So Julia, before you and I made this video, we were talking about Saturn's involvement in the pandemic hot degree and the fact that Saturn and Pluto met up in January, and then during the course of the year, Saturn actually moves out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. And I think I remember you saying that it's your feeling that while Saturn is in Aquarius, things may cool down a little bit. And then Saturn, you know, turns retrograde, backs into Capricorn again. It actually comes quite close to Pluto at 25 degrees when it turns direct again, and then it leaves Capricorn. So I want to say that this third and final pass of Mars to the pandemic hot degree happens, I think, just after Saturn has left sign, moved into Aquarius, is not coming back to meet up with Pluto for about another 35 years. And that is where we're going to be able to really breathe a sigh of relief and feel like, oh, I want to close the book on 2020 and look for better things in 2021. What are your thoughts about this Saturn involvement, Julia?
I think, well, it's so cool that that is kind of correlating with the last bang from Mars in December of 2020. Yeah, I think that that will be a time where real momentum can begin out of this situation.
Yeah. And you know, I think that in the other video, the astrology of the coronavirus pandemic, we talked about Jupiter's passes to the pandemic hot degree. And I really do think that those are going to correlate to flare-ups of the pandemic itself and intensifications, expansions on, and exacerbations of the general feeling of oppression that people are having. So a biggening of the stress for the people who are the most under stress at this time. And but I think that the Mars transits to it are going to feel different and are going to be more about the anger and frustration that we feel under lockdown,
Mhm.
and our outrage at people who are behaving differently and responding differently to it than ourselves. So I think that's some of what is going to happen here. And noticing that these Mars passes are happening in the summer, you know, August, and then another one in October, and then into the fall in December. I think that this, you know, this fits with and correlates with some of the news that we've been hearing from the CDC and Dr. Fauci and other sources that says, you know, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I think that it's important to accept that and behave accordingly.
Yeah.
Yep. Goodness, is there anything else that we want to say here? No, I think we said everything. I would strongly recommend that if you enjoyed this video and that this information is useful to you, that you find our playlist about, I think it's called the Astrology of Pandemic Year 2020, and check it out and watch the videos there, because you will discover that we posted a video back in November, which we actually made in October, about how this year was going to feel. We didn't know then that it was going to look like a pandemic, but it sure as hell is clear now, isn't it? And
Mm.
so watching that video again about Saturn and Pluto connecting in January is a really good thing to do. And then watching the videos about Jupiter's interaction and you know, how to understand it in your own chart and what to do about it. I
Yeah.
really do recommend it. We wish you the best of luck and the best times that you can possibly have under these conditions. Stay safe, and we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.